Welcome to a streaming live edition of the Carolina Weather Group. You are looking at right now the first tropical system of 2025. And NOAA is out with their expectations of what we could see in the months ahead because, like it or not, June and the hurricane season is upon us. I'm James Brierton in Charlotte. That's Frank Strait in Columbia, South Carolina. That's right. You're looking at the first tropical system of the 2025 hurricane season. This one is in the Pacific. It is a tropical depression on this Wednesday night. We will get some insight from Frank coming up here in a few minutes on what we can expect to see in the Atlantic coming up. But also, NOAA is out with their prediction. And as our lower third at the bottom of the screen says, if you're watching live with us on YouTube and Facebook, NOAA does predict an active 2025 hurricane season. And understandably, Frank, less than a year since Helene brought devastating impacts to the Carolinas, less than a year since storms like Debbie left an everlasting imprint on the Carolinas. A lot of people probably do not want to hear us say that NOAA predicts an active 2025 hurricane season, but that is what the forecast seems to be lining up with, sir.
It sure is. They're calling for 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, 3 to 5 major hurricanes. There it is. There's a slide that I have created on my day job that I'll be showing at a retirement community tomorrow that shows the two most prominent forecasts, from the two most prominent agencies, NOAA and Colorado State University, alongside the average and what we've seen the last couple of years. And there's a QR code there, too. You can scan that and go to seasonalhurricanepredictions.com and look at everyone who predicts and reports to them. Their forecast includes a lot of private sector entities and universities and so forth. But as you can see, NOAA, along with Colorado State, are showing are forecasting an active hurricane season. Above average anyway, but not hyperactive. They're not calling for it to be as active as the last couple of years have been, and that's in terms of both named storms and hurricanes. We are expecting to be kind of in between the last couple of years in terms of major hurricanes.
Yeah, and the example that we all so often hear, right, is even on a season where the prediction is low, you can still end up with Andrew like they did in 1992, if my memory serves me correct.
That's right. It only takes one.
It only takes one. And it's also the 20-year anniversary of Katrina. And that was a reoccurring theme when NOAA held their annual news conference last Thursday. And we're going to bring you a whole series of highlights. You'll hear from them in just a moment. And I do want to let you know, before we get too much further into today's show, we will be talking about all that rain we got here in the Carolinas, as well as the continued storm threat for the rest of the week coming up in the second half hour of our show. But let's continue on with what we've been discussing here. And Frank was just hitting on it, talking about what NOAA and the National Weather Service, the National Hurricane Center, all of those being used interchangeably here, predict for the 2025 hurricane season. Frank showing us how it compares to some of the top private sector forecasts or educational forecasts to come out from Colorado State or even NC State. But here's Ken Graham, the director of National Hurricane Center, officially telling you the numbers.
Specifically, it's a 60% chance of above normal season, a 30% chance of a near normal season, and only a 10% chance to be below normal. So we're really looking at an above normal season once again. For the range of storms, we're calling for 13 to 19 named storms. That's when we get to 39 miles an hour when we name the storms. So 13 to 19 of those. Of these, 6 to 10 are forecast to become hurricanes. And that's when you get to the 74 mile an hour mark. And 3 to 5 is the number of major hurricanes. That's Cat 3 and above, with maximum sustained winds of 111 miles an hour.
I do appreciate the way he explained it. Again, reminding us what each one of those thresholds is, where things get a name, where they become major, right? Major category 3 or above, 39 miles an hour is kind of where they form. He also had a pie chart on the screen, and I don't think for our audio listeners they were able to hear it. But it gave the probability of seeing a above average season. And they had that at 60%. So again, like you said, Frank, not hyperactive, but a little bit more than usual.
That's right. And over the last couple of years, we've been concerned that the hurricane season would be pretty active. And to explain why that is, I guess we have to take kind of pop the hood on our forecast and look and see what's under there. So I will call you back to my screen share and talk about a couple of things. The first being sea surface temperatures, and we'll start in the Pacific because that's where ENSO happens. ENSO stands for El Nino Southern Oscillation. That covers El Nino, where it's warmer than average, the waters of the equatorial, central, and east Pacific. La Nina, where those waters are cooler than average. And the neutral phase, where neither one's going on. That's where we are now, by the way, technically in the neutral phase, with neither one's going on. And the impacts of all that on the atmosphere. All that is lumped together and called ENSO. So you're looking at sea surface temperature anomalies for the Eastern Pacific Ocean right now. And right now, it actually looks like a lot of that area is cooler than average, which would indicate La Nina conditions, but there's also a good bit of warmer than average areas too. So right now, officially anyway, according to NOAA, we are in ENSO neutral conditions. That being said, since they made that declaration, the East Pacific waters have cooled off some, so I'm not sure that we are still, but an update to that will come in the first part of June. Looking at recent measurements, this is the one measurement of El Nino, which is an index called the multivariate ENSO index, or MEI. When that's negative, you have La Nina going on. As you can see, we've trended into close to zero. Last measurement was minus 0.4 on this index, which is as low as it can be and still be in the neutral phase. Another index that's used is called the Oceanic Nino Index, ONI, which is closer to zero in the ENSO neutral range as well. So right now we are technically in ENSO neutral conditions, and that means that we don't have, more importantly, we don't have a La Nina going on right now. And La Nina is favorable for a busy Atlantic hurricane season because when you have La Nina going on, you tend to have less vertical wind shear over the tropical Atlantic. Vertical wind shear tears storms apart. That just vertical wind shear just simply means that you have winds blowing in different directions and at different speeds at different heights in the atmosphere. And hurricanes, tropical cyclones in general, want as little of that to be going on as possible. So
No one likes
La
to be ripped
Nina,
apart.
right? They get ripped apart. So La Nina it makes tropical cyclones happy, and that's why you see a lot of them during La Nina years in the Atlantic. El Nino is just the opposite. You get lots of shear, and so you don't get as many storms. So that's one thing we look at. The other thing we look at is sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic, and the last several years, especially the last 2 years, the water temperatures have been very warm over the Atlantic, and last year they were near record levels, in some cases above, setting new records in certain parts of the Atlantic. Well, this year things are very different in that the Atlantic, the tropical Atlantic, has cooled off considerably. What you're looking at now is the sea surface temperature. That's from the 1st of May. Let me get that to the current. There's the 27th. Okay,
yeah, in recent years, right, the Earth has been doing a really good job of being excessively warm, and that's like you said, that's where we were last year. We thought things were going to be gangbusters last year, and to some respect, they were.
Right. So that has changed. This year, the Atlantic's cooled off a good bit. As you can see, the tropical Atlantic still mostly above normal, but there's an area that's near or even below normal. The Caribbean's mostly above normal, but not by much. The Gulf of Mexico's warm. The Southwest Atlantic is warm, which is a little concerning. If we were to have a hurricane come at us from that direction, the waters are warmer than normal. Over the Gulf of Mexico, for storms that might want to take a Helene-like track, the waters are warmer than normal there, so that could be an energy drink for any tropical cyclone that moves through that area and comes our way in the Carolinas. So that will be a little bit of a concern, but elsewhere over the Atlantic, the waters are actually closer to what's normal, and that's a big change from last year. This is the change from last year. This is a graphic from weatherbottles.com, and you can see that 2024 or 2025 minus 2024 results in some negative values where it's cooler than last year over pretty much the entire tropical Atlantic, pretty much the entire main development region, really. The rest of the eastern Atlantic, now the southwestern Atlantic is a little warmer. Parts of the Gulf of Mexico are warmer. The area up by the Azores and over to Europe is warmer, but we don't care about that because that's not where tropical cyclones form.
No, we'll be amused though if they get a tropical system in Europe again. But I guess, Frank, what you're saying is it's cooler than last year, but still slightly above normal.
Correct. And because of that, and because we have been so neutral conditions, we expect the Atlantic hurricane season to be more active than usual again, but the odds of a hyperactive season are pretty low.
Yeah. Yeah, it took me a long time. Anybody's listening right now, and any of this sounds foreign, it took me a long time to start grasping and getting comfortable with some of this vocabulary. Not that I'm an expert in it by any means. That's why Frank's here. But it finally clicked in my brain after one of these many episodes, right? It's kind of like the seesaw effect between the Pacific and Atlantic on kind of who's hotter and who's colder. But we can kind of look at one to kind of telegraph what the other might be doing. Is that right, Frank?
Well, sort of.
So close.
Yeah, right. There, you get conflicting signals sometimes. Like, for example, 2 years ago, the Atlantic sea surface temperatures were much warmer than usual, but we had El Nino going on in the East Pacific for the 2023 season. 2023 ended up being pretty active. We had 20 named storms that year. It turns out the Atlantic being so very warm was the dominant signal because instead of getting the upper level trough at the upper levels of the atmosphere, the upper part of the troposphere over the tropical Atlantic, and thus westerly winds aloft that cause shear, instead there was a ridge, and instead you didn't have those westerly winds aloft that you typically see during El Nino. Those westerly winds stayed north like they usually do in La Nina years, so those warm waters won out over the fact that we had an El Nino going on.
Lots of little factors to look at. More did be discussed. We've got a few highlights here. NOAA spoke for a whole hour last week, and you can find that on their YouTube channel. But here's about 2 minutes of their highlights on what they discussed in their briefing and what they're keeping an eye on.
This forecast is the framework that provides us with a first look at what we can expect, and in a way signals the start of storm season.
It's a pleasure to be here to talk about this important announcement about NOAA's 2025 Atlantic Hurricane Season Outlook. The United States is fortunate to have the world's best scientists, computer and modeling experts, and meteorologists at NOAA, who provide us with accurate forecasts of tropical storms. These experts are constantly learning from current and past weather events, such as Hurricane Katrina, which made landfall nearly 20 years ago this summer, just 50 miles where we stand here today in Gretna, Louisiana. Before I close, I want to take a moment to remind you, prepare now and stay ready throughout the season. Please visit www.hurricanes.gov/prepare to understand your own risk with hurricanes and begin the pre-season preparations now. Stay informed, be ready to heed the warnings from your NOAA National Weather Service and your local emergency managers who are so critical in protecting lives and property.
Here's a few stats. Go back, think about this, 2005. Our models had an average day 5 track error about 460 miles. Today it's 200. Think about that. 5 days out, 460 miles, that's your forecast. We've narrowed that down to 5 days to 200 miles. Incredible. Yeah, not bad, you'll take it. Joe will take it before arrival. The strongest hurricanes are the ones that develop the fastest. Ready for this stat? I may repeat it more than once. Every Category 5 storm that's ever hit this country was a tropical storm or less 3 days prior. Take it in. If you don't get goosebumps, then I'll repeat it and give you goosebumps. So everything's in place for an above average season. So no matter the forecast, what do we always say? Only takes one. It only takes one. So we got to be prepared right now. We've heard that from the parish president, Laura. We got to be ready. There's no lines for supplies today. No lines for gas, no lines for plywood, no lines for water. So while there's no lines, it's a good time to go out there and get your supplies.
200-mile margin of error on that hurricane cone today, an improvement from where it was when we had Katrina. But 200 miles, as the crow flies, will get you along the coastline from Virginia to South Carolina, or from South Carolina to Georgia, by my crude math. And, that is, they've eliminated half the error, and that cone has gotten smaller, Frank.
Right. However, keep in mind that's still a lot of error. Like, for example, suppose you have a hurricane that's over Nassau, the Bahamas, and it's moving to the northwest, and we're worried that it's going to hit the Carolinas. That 200-mile error could mean the difference from it hitting Savannah, Georgia, or hitting Hatteras, or even missing to the east. So there's still a lot of work to be done.
Sure. And I
it's
feel
still great that they've halved the error, or even
You're
down
right.
by a third even. But there's still a lot of work to be done. So and you have to keep that in mind. And so when you in New Bern or Wilmington are wondering why you're being evacuated when
Sure.
the center of the cone, and that line in the middle of the cone has landfall occurring in Beaufort, South Carolina. Well, there's a reason for that, because it only has to be off by like 30 miles to the east, and you're in a hurricane.
Yeah, and certainly, one of the things that the National Hurricane Center has really been trying to message over the last couple of years are impacts from the storm outside the cone, because whether it's for a margin of error reason and the storm goes outside the cone, or just the fact that the storm is bigger than the cone just represents where the center of circulation is, not where the extent of impacts is. And that's why we've seen changes in how they are trying to message what the cone is and what the impacts from the storm are. Ken Graham, again, director of the National Weather Service and previous director of the National Hurricane Center, talked a little bit more about that
Strongest
last week.
hurricanes
Take a
are the
listen.
ones that develop the fastest. Ready for this stat? I may repeat it more than once. Every Category 5 storm that's ever hit this country was a tropical storm or less 3 days prior. Take it in. If you don't get goosebumps, then I'll repeat it and give you goosebumps. Every Cat 5 that hit this country was a tropical storm or less 3 days prior. The big ones that hit this country are fast. That's why the preparedness we're talking about today, you got to have the plan early, because the big ones are really quick, okay? So having that potential tropical cyclone gives us that extra time. We're also updating the forecast cone. It'll be operational this year. It was experimental last year. It's operational this year, and we're really trying to change the cone, because that was the number one question I got at the Hurricane Center director. What are you going to do with this cone? It's like, well, what are you going to do? There's no perfect solution with some of this, but we're trying. So with the cone, the better we get, the smaller the cone. And now we're adding the inland watches and warnings, so you can see that it's not just the cone. You're going to see the watches and warnings outside that cone and well inland. That's going to help the public be able to see this. It isn't just right there at the cone. The impacts are well outside the cone. And please remember what the cone is. We got to keep reminding the public. Every media outlet watching today, please help us remind to the public that the impacts are well outside the cone. The cone is a cone of error. It's where we expect the center of the storm to be 2/3 of the time. So 1/3 of the time it's outside the cone. So we've got to remember that. And this year we did such a great job with the forecast, the cone got smaller this year. So the better we do, the smaller the cone. It's based on the last 5 years of error. All right, so really we're looking at upgrades to the inland flooding. I mean, the water's the biggest killer in these things, but fatalities are the highest. Over the years, I've seen so many cases where the inland flooding causes more fatalities than on the coast, because we're evacuating for surge.
Evacuating for surge, we see along the coast. Hey, Stormy the cat, there she is. I knew she'd
Stormy the
show
weather
up here.
cat has arrived.
Show up here sooner rather than later. Evacuating for surge along the coast, but as Helene showed us, flooding can happen miles, hundreds of miles from the coast. And that's why when you look at the forecast cone this year on hurricanes.gov, you will see watches and warnings drawn onto that map, not only along the coast where they have been drawing in those surge warnings, but also in places like western North Carolina, as the National Weather Service predicts flooding inland. That would make a huge difference. It was experimental last year, and they're making it more operational this year. And I think, Frank, that will help. I think the cone. I think Ken Graham is right. There's been lots of discussion about the cone and ways to improve the cone, and there's always ways to do it better. But it's a balancing act, and I don't know that I've got another $1 million example that would be better.
No, I don't either. I think that we can probably improve the cone and what we and how we display it, but there's always going to be this question about, okay, what does this actually mean, and
Right.
how do we relate the meaning of this to people? I think those questions are always going to be there. I don't think there's going to be any way to get those questions to go away. Nothing is going to be perfectly obvious. I mean, you look at the cone graphic and it seems pretty intuitive. Okay, that's where the bad stuff's going to be, somewhere in that cone. But that's not right. And if you drew a cone that only showed where the bad stuff was going to happen, it'd be a huge cone, and people are going to say, "No, it's not going to affect all these places." Well, you remember what this experimental graphic looked like last year, where you had hurricane warnings almost all over Florida, almost all over Georgia, and tropical storm warnings all over Florida, almost all over Georgia, over a lot of South Carolina, and a good chunk of North Carolina.
I actually can, yeah, I can put them on
Yeah,
the
if
screen
you've got
here.
them handy there.
Because I think I've got them now. Okay, so if we're getting lost in the weeds on you, let's show you a visual, starting with the classic legacy cone. So here is the cone for Helene last year, and you'll see that outlined in blue and red along the coast are those hurricane warnings, those storm surge warnings, and then you see that Helene is forecast to go through Georgia and kind of at the time of this forecast skirt its way into Tennessee. But you'll notice there's no colors on the map for Carolina or Tennessee. But if we switch
Right.
that, go
If
ahead.
you look at just that, you think, okay, so there's going to be
Right.
bad things happening at the coast, and maybe some bad things will happen in the Florida Panhandle, Georgia, East Tennessee, and well, more of Tennessee, and a lot of Tennessee, and a lot of Kentucky. That's what you think if you just look at this, right?
That's right. And now here's how that map would look under this update. You can see that now inland, they've drawn in yellows and blues and reds for different products to show you as far as Macon, Georgia, Columbus, Georgia, even into portions of South Carolina, we can expect impacts. Now, this would obviously evolve at this particular moment in time. This is Wednesday, September 25th. We're dealing with a predecessor rain event. Helene is still a tropical storm. It's going to do one of those rapid intensification things over the Gulf waters here. So those impacts that they are forecasting days out, 1, 2, 3 days out, at that moment in time, go into South Georgia, go into coastal South Carolina, but those would shift as the storm shifts. And we would eventually, on this updated map, see those impacts drawn into upstate South Carolina, western North Carolina. And I think that would really help with the communication, Frank.
Right. And you have to keep in mind that this map, this advisory was issued more than 48 hours before landfall or before the onset of tropical storm or hurricane force winds. So, and you have to be within 48 hours to have a watch issued.
Yeah, here's a later
So-
one from Thursday, September
Right, there
26th.
you go. So that shows that's 12 hours or so before landfall, and you're seeing the entire area that's going to be affected by potentially damaging wind there. Hurricane force in the red and tropical storm force in the blue. Little did we really realize, or most people realize anyway, that that would be high-end tropical storm, almost hurricane
Right.
force winds over almost all of Georgia and upstate South Carolina, the central Savannah River area, and as well as western North Carolina.
Yeah, because we know that Augusta got hurricane force, at least gusts, if not sustained.
Yes, the estimates
Yeah.
were over 100 mile an hour wind gusts in that area.
And not to dive us down a rabbit hole, but when Frank and I are talking about hurricane watches, hurricane warnings, tropical storm watches, tropical storm warnings, all of these characteristics that determine whether a storm is a depression, a storm, or a cat are based purely on wind. So even if you find this map underwhelming because you're like, well, that's just a tropical storm warning for the Carolinas, technically, and I don't want to start a controversy, technically, by all legal definitions, Helene was a tropical storm by wind speeds in most of the Carolinas, but the impact that we felt, sure, was wind, but it was the flooding water, which is just a short tangent to say that the Saffir-Simpson scale takes in no consideration for floodwaters, and that's probably a whole nother episode in of itself.
Right. We can spend 2 or 3 episodes if we want talking about the problems with the Saffir-Simpson scale because it's based only on wind.
Only.
There's some talk about whether we should start considering pressure as well. I think folks at Colorado State are an advocate of that. Some private sector people like Joe Bastardi are an advocate of that as well. But right now, it's only wind that it's taking into account. It doesn't talk about storm surge. It doesn't refer to how much rain might fall. It doesn't refer to whether or not it's going to cause 30 tornadoes.
Yep.
Or 21 just in South Carolina. None of that. Just about the maximum sustained winds.
Yeah.
Right.
Which sounds like a tangent, and it is, but it relates to, whether you're looking at NOAA, you're looking at Colorado State, you're looking at NC State, when they say 13 to 19 named storms, when they're saying 6 to 10 hurricanes, when they're saying 3 to 5 major hurricanes, that is just purely based on the system that we use in 2025 and have for years that is purely wind-based.
Right.
So big major caveat there.
Right. And Ken Graham, all he's doing is admitting that the system has some flaws.
100%.
And that we're working on it. Now that being said, certainly you do want to listen to what the National Hurricane Center is saying about a storm might be coming your way. But it's also important to listen to what your local National Weather Service office is saying, relayed through local media or a private sector agency, whatever, because that is where you will hear the exact impacts that are expected in your community.
Yeah.
You'll hear the general 30,000 foot big picture from the National Hurricane Center, but if you want to know what might happen in your backyard, if you're in Spartanburg, South Carolina, you're going to want to, watch one of the TV stations up there, or go visit your National Weather Service's website and see what their products have to say. So then you'll know what you need to prepare for.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the video clip here, but Ken Graham read in that briefing one of the forecast discussions from Katrina. The infamous one where this will be catastrophic, this will be life-threatening, and those details are out there, right? They're in the forecast discussions, which you as the general public can go read, or again, as Frank said, hear them regurgitated and reprocessed through broadcast media that sometimes will translate them into general terms. But right, Frank, you can go to weather.gov/GSP and look at that forecast discussion from the meteorologist in your backyard, in your local National Weather Service office. Lots of talk about Helene and Katrina and big storms at the briefing last week. I've had the computer compile all of the mentions of Helene that were during last week's NOAA hurricane outlook.
I'd like to thank our emergency management team and all of our Jefferson Parish employees who work collectively year-round to prepare for, respond to, and recover from hurricanes. We opened this state-of-the-art emergency operations center in 2011, a concrete reminder of the unified response that emerged in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina's devastation almost 20 years ago.
In 2024, inland flooding was one of the most destructive forces during the hurricane season, with rainfall totals from Hurricane Helene exceeding 30 inches in communities located hundreds of miles from the coast. These storms are a stark reminder about how vital it is to prepare for the upcoming hurricane season now, before the storms begin forming in the Atlantic Basin.
And we saw the forecast improvements firsthand in 2024, and the skill was better than ever. It was amazing to watch 2024. Helene was forecast to be a major hurricane, take this, before it was even a depression. It was a bunch of clouds, a couple thunderstorms, and we were able to have the confidence in the modeling, confidence in our products to be able to say, we're going to issue a cone, we're going to put out the products, we're going to do that based on a clump of clouds. The National Hurricane Center was really aggressive doing that, and we were right on the money, and it saved a lot of lives. All right, the other part of it is, NOAA's working really hard on flood inundation mapping, and we're going to have the whole country modeled by 2026. Why is this important? we can actually give an information and graphic on what's going to flood days before the flood. That's a game changer. And NOAA's really pioneering this, and we actually issued it in Helene, and that allowed a hospital in Tennessee to be able to evacuate and save every patient in there. They evacuated because of that product. And Nashville just got access to that product days before that, and they were able to put that out and save people in the hospital. Last year, I got to fly into a hurricane for the first time. I flew into Helene with the hurricane hunters, and I had a whole new appreciation of the storm as we got pushed up about 1,000 feet in a matter of seconds. It was something.
I don't know that I'd have the stomach for that flight, but boy, would I love to do it as a bucket list item, Frank.
Yeah, I think I would do it too.
You think
just
you could do
once.
it? Bring the barf bag.
Yeah.
Ken Graham mentioning a flood inundation system that I got to go learn more about. I've jotted that down to go explore more about it. Hopefully we don't need it, but all of this is about preparedness. We will eventually need these tools some way, somehow. And one of the tools he mentions is how they started forecasting for what would become Helene based off a bunch of clouds. And heard Ken Graham multiple times in this show, multiple times in that briefing, talk about how every Cat 5 that ever hit the U.S. rapidly intensified. What does that mean? It means that it went from 0 to 60, 0 to 120 within days, within hours. And one of the ways that the Weather Service is going to try to communicate to the public, to the media, that something is brewing is through their potential tropical cyclone product or bulletin. It has a weird name, in my opinion, because here in America, we don't call them cyclones, but this is their way of saying something's happening over here. It's too soon for us to call it anything by any of the definitions we've talked about so far, but it is a potential developing system. And Frank, do you remember we had a PTC right off the coast of the Carolinas like a week before Helene? We actually thought that one was going to get named Helene. It was a PTC, and it came this close to actually becoming the name Helene.
Yep, if it would have spent 12 more hours over the water, it probably would have become a tropical cyclone.
A little bit more cooking. Yeah, a little bit more. Ken Graham also mentioned his first ever flight on a Hurricane Hunter aircraft, one of the many amazing life-saving tools that the National Weather Service uses to collect data. Data is what makes good forecast from good forecasters. And so in last week's briefing, amongst a sea of recent headlines about funding and resources, you heard plenty of mentions about tools and tool sets.
The NOAA hurricane hunters are prepared to fly their P3 and G4 aircraft into and around hurricanes, with researchers on board collecting invaluable data that helps forecasters make accurate predictions and give scientists a better understanding of storm processes. To improve the understanding and prediction of how hurricanes intensify, NOAA Research, in partnership with Cooperative Institute Marine and Atmospheric Studies at the University of Miami, are deploying new small aircraft drone systems, atmospheric profilers, and underwater gliders. These new technologies continue to advance our knowledge of hurricanes, fill critical data gaps, and improve the hurricane forecast accuracy. NOAA is also modernizing and upgrading its tropical atmospheric ocean buoy array with new capabilities, upgraded instrumentation, more strategic placement of the buoys, and higher frequency operations. Data from these buoys are used to forecast El Nino and La Nina, which influence hurricane activity. NOAA's model, the Hurricane Analysis Forecast System, or HAFS, will undergo an upgrade this season that is expected to further improve tracking of forecasts, which is critical for evacuation efforts. The upgraded model is expected to improve forecasts of rapid intensification. So when a storm winds increase 35 miles per hour within just 24 hours. And that's important as rapidly intensifying hurricanes can be some of the most devastating storms to our coastal communities.
Frank, you're a forecaster. Why does data collection play a role in what will happen in the future?
Well, data collection is extremely critical because all the data that we gather, surface observations, weather radar observations, satellite observations, weather balloons that are sent up from hundreds of locations around the world, are what feeds our computer models. And if that data isn't any good, then it's garbage you're putting into the model, and you'll get garbage out of the model. And nobody wants to get garbage out of the model, because then you're not going to put out a good forecast. So it's important that we have as much good data as we can get reasonably, so that we can have a good basis and a good, what we call initialization for the computer models, which is basically just the best view we can come up with of what the atmosphere looks like at the start of the computer model. Because every little error you introduce into that makes the forecast worse. And coming out of that computer model, which means that the forecast you hear from your friendly neighborhood meteorologist on television will be worse if you're without that data.
How can you attempt to predict the future if you don't have a grasp on reality right now?
Correct.
As we wrap up this conversation this week, I want to let you know that coming up next week here on the Carolina Weather Group, we're going to talk more about the hurricane season ahead. We're happy to let you know that Michael Lowry will be coming back on as a guest of the Carolina Weather Group. He just wrote on his Substack an article about NOAA and their forecast outlook and the staffing challenges. And this comes from a guy who is currently a hurricane expert in Miami on local television there. He has worked for the National Hurricane Center. You've seen him on cable TV before. You've seen him on our show. He's a really great expert. He's going to come on and talk about, what he thinks the hurricane season ahead will spell, and what he knows from his experience about what some of the current state of the National Weather Service might mean for the state of operations. But as you can see on the screen right here from his graphic at WPLG, NOAA once again calling for 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, 3 to 5 major Category 3 or greater storms. Comparing that to Colorado State University, which is also calling for an above average. They're calling for 17 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes. You can see we're parsing out here just slightly above average, and we know the forecast from NC State, which is among those well-respected forecasts in the grand portfolio of forecasts, is also calling for, again, slightly above average. Frank, any last thoughts on this topic as I put the names up on the screen of which storms we can maybe anticipate this year?
Well, let's see. If we go to 17, that takes us, let's see, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. That takes us out to Rebecca, I guess, which means there's a really good chance that Melissa becomes a hurricane this year.
And we know Melissa.
Congratulate her if she succeeds in becoming a hurricane this year.
Yeah. I do want to point out it's Rebecca with a K.
Yes, it's Rebecca with a K. And if you have any questions about how to pronounce any of these names, the National Hurricane Center on their website has a pronunciation guide in case Melissa's hard to pronounce for you.
Well, the first one, is it Andrea or Andrea?
Yeah, right. I'm just going to call it Andrea. I don't care what the pronunciation guy says. Every Andrea I've known has pronounced it Andrea. So now there are some who pronounce it differently, but
I will say there's no Isaias, which is going to make at least one elected official very happy.
No comment. One remaining comment I'd like to make, though, James, if you would so kindly return to my screen share.
That's fine, but when I update our merch store, what do you guys think? You think a hat or a T-shirt or a mug of please go to my screen share, I think is probably going to be warranted. Probably a mug, because then I could take a sip from it every time. Here we go.
There you go. If you're in South Carolina anyway, I won't speak for North Carolina, but if you're in South Carolina, SCEMD has at hurricane.sc the South Carolina Hurricane Guide, where you can go and not only get preparation tips for hurricanes, but also find out if you're in an evacuation zone if you live near the coast. And if you like to kick it old school, you can pick up a paper copy of this hurricane guide from DMV locations along the South Carolina coast. I think Walgreens stores statewide have it as well. And also South Carolina's Welcome Centers can give you a copy of that. So
I can get to one of those.
Yes, there's actually one on 77, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just
There is.
just on our side of the state line. Near Carowinds.
There
Carowinds was my
is.
first job, by the way, when I was a teenager.
Ooh, that would be a fun.
Made many thousands of funnel cakes.
And now you can't stand to look at them.
No, I actually still like funnel cakes as long as they have the good chocolate topping on them.
Great resources there. I can't speak for North Carolina, but readync.gov is probably where they'd want to tell us to send you if you live in North Carolina. And as Frank mentioned, the hurricane guide there. Coming
Anytime
up,
somebody from North Carolina's Emergency Management Division wants to come on and talk hurricane prep, you're welcome. Just come on. Just give us a call. Hit us up on Twitter, X, whatever. Just say hey.
Yeah, one of those things. Coming up on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about the storm chances for the rest of the weekend. Oh my goodness, how much rain we've already seen. We're back in 60 seconds, 90 seconds. I don't know. We're back real soon. Don't go far.
And let you guys see what it is that I'm experiencing.
Trying to get a direct measurement with a handheld Kestrel anemometer here. We'll see what we can pick up, but and there goes change.
When a tornado-warned cell came through the neighborhood and it brought down several large pines, just like the one you're seeing right here behind me. To give you a sense of what the aftermath of storm damage smells like, it smells very heavily of pine and also sounds like chainsaws. We have another tree down here. This one just barely missing this brick home.
I mean, this is incredible. Let me turn the camera around, get us back into kind of a dry view.
And I get up here, and all of a sudden, the storm surge started. And all of a sudden, I ended up in about 4 feet of water.
I'm Scotty Powell here reporting just outside of Sparta, North Carolina, where you've seen a lot of the earthquake damage. Again, a 5.1 magnitude earthquake rocked Sparta, North Carolina earlier this morning, just after 8 a.m.
If you're going to look at the footing of that, you'll see where it was a twist. Very severe wind that caused these structures.
From Gaston County to back here in Mecklenburg County, those were just 2 of the tornado warnings that were issued here for the greater Charlotte area.
I'm not one for hyperbole, but it's countless at this point. There's trees on houses, there's a lot of roads that are blocked. We're just trying to get cleaned up so people can get through.
Have you ever seen the Dan River like this before?
No, not that I can recall. I mean, I've seen it fairly flooded before, but I've never seen it to where we're now kind of asking ourselves, okay, a couple more feet.
What's crazy about that promo is I think that's just all 2020. I think all of that happened in the span of like a year. Special thanks to all of our supporters who support the Carolina Weather Group each and every week. They've joined us over at Patreon or become a YouTube member. You too can join for just $1 to support the show and unlock extras coming up in the next couple weeks. As we head into the summer months, I'm going to be holding a members-only chat to show you what we were working on for our upgraded Carolina Weather Net. That streams for free currently on YouTube and will continue to stream for free on YouTube, but our members will get a first peek at some of the new features that will be coming to our tool set that streams around the clock to let you know about severe weather warnings. And boy, Frank, has our Carolina Weather Net been getting a workout this week. We've got several inches of rain already accumulated on this Wednesday and more to come. Let me show you a rainfall total so far, if I may. I apparently have a frog in my throat for the second half of this show, but that's okay. We will carry on. Rainfall totals, several inches of rain from just on again, off again deluges across the Carolinas. I think some of this might be underreporting because I know our friend Tim Pounds in the greater Augusta area had several roads flooded out, and while 1 inch of rain can do that, I think there was probably more localized hotspots than our little chart here is picking up. It does have 2.86 in your neck of the woods, just north of Columbia. Does that feel about right to you?
There was an isolated storm up that way yesterday, I think.
Yeah. Okay, that would be encompassed by the 72 hours.
Yeah, it did not hit me. Now, there was a pretty good slug of rain that went across the southern part of South Carolina, the southern central Savannah River area and low country.
Yep.
And they got a lot of rain in the Charleston area and down toward Beaufort and into what is that spot there, Ridgeland?
I don't know which spot you're looking at, but I will say for audio listeners, we're talking 2, 3, 4 inches of rain in the last
Yeah, it looks
72
like
hours.
the McClellanville area that had about 4, so that's pretty that's pretty substantial.
And we know this southern portion of our area was even exposed to a bit of a severe weather risk because they weren't wedged in like the rest of us. And we'll talk about the severe risk for the rest of the week coming up. But I want to slide this along the coast here and let you know that we still have localized heavy amounts, 2 or 3 inches outside of Myrtle. But we also have, and I think this unfortunately takes the cake, 7 inches of rain in the last 72 hours between Wilmington and Jacksonville here, just outside of Jacksonville. We know that they had a considerable flash flood warning, and we're conducting several water rescues. Jacksonville itself, 6 inches. A couple of surrounding observations here start as low as 2. But I mean, again, in that Jacksonville Onslow area, 6 or 7 inches of rain in 72 hours. And I think most of this fell yesterday. That's a lot of rain.
Yeah, it's a pretty good deluge, and some more deluges are likely on the way over the next couple of days, James, along with some risk for severe storms too.
Yes. Let's go ahead and show you the Storm Prediction Center outlook from the National Hurricane Center for tomorrow. This is Thursday. You can see a good portion of both North Carolina and South Carolina is in that marginal tier 1 out of 5 risk. Essentially, how would I describe this? South and east of I-85?
In North Carolina, that might be the case. There's a good bit of area south of 85 that's not in the marginal risk area.
Not the mountains.
South Carolina.
How about not the
Right.
mountains? Yeah, this is really hard to describe for audio listeners. It's kind of slicing right through the state. But
yeah, this is not to say you're in the clear. There could still be a thunderstorm. Just it's not there's not a good chance of a severe storm there like there is. Although the risk is low and it's marginal risk. Now we joke around here on Carolina Weather Group because every time it seems that there's a marginal risk area out, we deal with a slew of warnings that come out.
Down the hatches. Yeah.
Right.
Friday's a little bit easier for me to describe for audio listeners because everyone is in at least a marginal, if not a slight, which is a 2 out of 5. So everyone has a chance of severe weather come Friday.
Right. And there's some concern in the discussion that the Storm Prediction Center put out for Friday that things could come together. They might have to up that another level at some point.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's twice this episode. We're really endorsing reading the area forecast discussions, huh?
Right. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, this will be caused by a cold front moving in. Go back to my screen share for a second, James. I'll show what's happening right now and how that affects everything. Okay, so there you see this little cluster of clouds down here of the lower Mississippi Valley. That's our little disturbance that brings us the rain and thunderstorms and low end risk for severe weather Thursday, tomorrow. This blob back here over the southern plains and central Rockies, that's our Friday storm. That and a cold front that's in this area as well, going through the Great Lakes and trailing into the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles. That comes our way Friday. Out ahead of it, it looks like we see a surge of warmth and humidity. The cool conditions that we saw yesterday and today will be a memory by that point. Looks like temperatures shoot up well into the 80s. Looks like it's going to be pretty humid across the Carolinas as well. So plenty of warm and humid air will be in place. Thunderstorm fuel. So it looks like we'll be pretty unstable with a lot of energy in the atmosphere to work with. So when the cold front moves in, we'll get thunderstorms. The setup is such that we could see some of these supercell thunderstorms. Those are the kind that make most of our tornadoes. So there's going to be a risk for some isolated tornadoes. Not sure how serious that is just yet. It's one of those things we have to stay tuned and see how things are shaping up tomorrow and then again Friday morning. But the concerns there. But most importantly, there's going to be a lot of instability present. Instability is a fancy word for just saying it gets cold really fast as you go up instead of the usual rate. Everybody knows it gets colder as you go up, but the faster that rate of cooling as you go up occurs, the more unstable the atmosphere is. It looks like it's going to be pretty unstable on Friday. And when it's pretty unstable, you have the risk for severe thunderstorms. And again, because it looks like we'll have a setup that allows for supercell thunderstorms with wind shear present, favorable for that. So there's going to be a tornado risk too, and that's why they're going with level 2 already, and might have to bump it up to even level 3, perhaps.
I hope not.
Just right.
Yeah, I certainly hope not. We will keep you posted on our social. We will be streaming again our Carolina Weather Net. So wherever you watch YouTube, from your phone to your TV, you can get severe weather alerts, live radar. But man, what a way to end the week, because I don't know about you, but my week started with this guy, the wedge, the CAD, whatever you want to call him, the damn cold air damming. This is a satellite image of when it finally started breaking up late yesterday. But, today in Charlotte, we got back up to 80. But earlier in the week, we were threatening to have the coldest high temperature on record was 60. We got down up to 61. Essentially, it's to say it was so cold we almost broke a record for how cold it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something you don't see very often, is temperatures really at like mid-February levels.
Yes.
For high temperaters.
And raining.
And raining. In May, when your normal high in Charlotte's 78 or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's
like
up there at the
Not
end of
60.
May. Actually, it might be. Yeah, not 60. That's more like February.
Yeah. I mean, my garden and lawn loved it for a while. But they're probably like, enough's enough now. But
Yeah,
2 more days of
I'm hoping we can order up another wedge day or two in like July and August.
I'm like a
I'm starting to
plant.
get sick of how hot it is.
I'm like a plant. I start to wilt if I don't get enough sun. I'm just like, I mentioned the merch store earlier, and I've experimented with it. I don't think it's on sale currently because I just can't find a really funny phrase I love. But I want to get a coffee mug that says something like CAD Buster, because like when it's wedged in like that and it's just clouds and rain for a day, I drink lots of coffee. So I want to have like a CAD mug. I don't know. Chat, drop me some ideas. Whatever you want on a mug. We'll see if we can make it.
In my former life up in Pennsylvania, we called days like Monday crap out days.
Crap out days. Yeah, Monday was.
We could get a mug that just says crap out, and it's a gray mug. And it just says crap out.
Monday was the type of holiday where I think most people just were like, I'll just sit here on the couch because it's gross outside.
I took a nap.
There you go. Thanks for proving my point. Do I have any other tabs? Are those all my tabs? I might be on.
You have too many tabs.
Too many tabs. Too many tabs. Do you have any other tabs?
Yeah. Go over to my screen share.
Do you have any tabs you want to close out?
Yes. Okay, so this is GFS model. This is the 12Z run from Wednesday morning. This is Friday we're looking at here, and that's where the cold front's coming through. So that's the reason why, or this Friday evening on the time step here, and the cold front's coming through, and it's causing thunderstorms. That's when we're concerned about severe weather. Late timing looks like it'll be later in the day and into the evening. Okay, but that's only one of the things I want to show. Let's advance on forward. Okay, there's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, out to the end of next week actually, and beyond. And look at those blobs down there in the Western Caribbean and coming out of there. Ooh, there's a menacing looking L there off the southeast coast. And actually turns out the weather pattern the first part of June, it looks like it might allow for a development to occur over the Western Caribbean, somewhere near the Yucatan, maybe southeast Gulf of Mexico, close to Cuba, maybe. That general area, and that's kind of a usual suspect area for June. But that's actually kind of common when you have an area of high pressure and an upper level trough along the East Coast. When that starts to lift away, sometimes you'll see a tropical cyclone form directly south of that area and kind of chase the high as it moves out. So that is a favorable setup. It also looks like we might get a favorable period from the Madden-Julian oscillation. Or at least something mimicking a favorable Madden-Julian oscillation pattern. And Madden-Julian is kind of complicated. We could spend 2 podcasts talking about the MJO too, so we won't get too deep in the woods with that. But I'll just say that the general setup might allow for a storm to form. It's not saying one's coming to the Carolinas, not saying where it might end up going, just saying we might get one to form. We'll worry about where it might go when it looks like one's going to form. But the bottom line is, you might have to hit the ground running this year. So the hurricane preps that we're saying you want to do, you might want to get those done just in case we get that storm. Let's say there's at least a 30% chance that we have a storm form during the first 2 weeks of June. So So suppose it forms, going to go somewhere, and we'd be one of the potential targets. So
June
Just
1st is
saying.
Sunday, and that is the start of
Yeah.
hurricane season.
So get those preseason preps in order. Make sure you've got the proper amount of food and water on hand,
And pets too. Don't forget
a new battery pack if you need one, a new generator if you've decided you want to get one this year. Go ahead and grab it. You might need it.
I wonder how many people might pick up satellite communications who didn't have them previously. We know that became real.
Right, yeah. Make sure you
important
understand how
after
to
Helene.
use that satellite functionality on your cell phone.
I understand it's convoluted on the iPhone. I don't have an iPhone, but I understand it's convoluted. I don't know.
I do, but it's not one that the more recent models that can do that. I think they're going to add it with a software update soon, though. Maybe. I have an iPhone 13. I think it's not available, but will become available soon with an iOS update.
Yeah,
I think
Apple
I heard
has one
that.
built in to iPhones, and then T-Mobile has a thing with Starlink that maybe requires more exploration on a future show. But I heard yesterday that you don't have to be a T-Mobile customer to try it. It works on a bunch of new-ish phones. Yeah, T Satellite Beta is free for all. The beta is free and open to anyone on any carrier until July. You have to have an eligible phone. But I was like, huh. And then after that, it auto renews for $10 a month. Interesting. All right, I'm going to end the show on a good note, on a positive note. We've been following this for 3 months, and we are happy to report that the Myrtle Beach wildfire in the past week since we last talked to you is now at 100% containment. Yes, that fire, the one we talked to you about 3 months ago,
Yay.
is finally at 100% containment. They've been trying real hard. It's been big. It's been a pain in the butt. Scotty Powell from our show, meteorologist in Myrtle Beach, talks about how a lot of these fires were kind of like, I don't know, undergrowth's the right word, but they were burning like underground. And so that was really hard to extinguish, and then they pop up again. It was a whole thing.
Right. Yeah, that's the problem with wildfires in that area is that the ground itself burns because there's so much organic material in the soil. So once the fire gets going, unless it rains really, really hard for a really long time, it's going to keep going.
Well, 3 months later, they got it under containment. I know that was a lot of hard work.
And that's because it rained really, really hard for like 2 days, not too long
That
ago.
helped.
And then it's been raining a good bit since then.
Saturate that soil. The drought index is looking better. And we'll see what it looks like in another week or two once we get all of this week's rain
Another
tabulated
update
into
will be
next
released
week's.
tomorrow, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, it sure will. All right. Well, Frank, that was a very meaty show, if I do say so myself.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Michael Lowry is back with us next week. Hurricane expert. You're not going to want to miss it. Get subscribed. And if you need something to listen to before then, Ken Graham, the director of the National Weather Service, was on our show a year or so ago. Go back into our feed. Look for the trifecta episode. It's him. It's Mike Bettis. It's Jim Cantori. It was a great conversation from our WeatherPod's Disaster Relief Telethon. And you really get a sense for who these people are. And they seem like really honest, smart people. So take a listen to that until we see you back here next week. But on behalf of Frank, I'm James. Be well. Stay subscribed. Talk to you soon.